And as we think about that design and we think about that gaming, certainly gaming has been something that is been done, wargaming, in our military for years. What does it look like as we start to take that gaming to the next level with some of the most sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithms that are out there? And so coming up next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tomas Sandholm. He is a professor of artificial intelligence at Carnegie Mellon. Dr. Sandholm is also the CEO of Strategy Robot. He's going to talk to us now about a very interesting game, one of that I find particularly interesting because it's a game now with multiple players, a game with imperfect information. And we'll be talking to his experience with Texas Hold'em, the fantastic work that has been done with artificial intelligence in this particular game and how that might be able to be used in other areas. Tomas, thanks so much for joining us here. Thanks for your collaboration that you've done in various different organizations, notable organizations in DoD, and excited to hear what you see in this future of gaming and artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Colonel Diller. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I'm going to talk about computational game theory and opponent exploitation AI for portfolio planning and COA generation and other applications. I'm here on behalf of Strategy Robot, where I'm founder, president, and CEO. Also, I'm Anhil Jordan, University Professor of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon and co-director of CMU AI. The executive summary is that our unique world-leading computational game theory AI has reached superhuman decision-making recently. And for those of you who don't know game theory, it is about making strategies when you're not the only player. There is one or more adversaries out there. So that's why it's also called strategic reasoning. And in AI, there are really two main reasons why AI gets adopted. One is labor savings, the other is superhuman decision-making. And in these high-stakes domains, it's really the latter. And now that we've just reached superhuman decision-making, there's now a great opportunity to apply this technology broadly into the DoD and related government agencies for a variety of applications, some of which we are already doing. So force design, allocation, sequencing and acquisition, planning at all of the decision-making levels, strategic, operative, and tactical. Wargaming for planning, but also for training and for evaluating officers. Doctrine and deployment optimization, strategic decision-making, especially now with the great power competition. Reveal, conceal, escalation, and de-escalation. Game theory is required for those so that we will understand how our adversaries will understand our signaling and vice versa. What will be believed, what won't. Intrusive ISR and reconnaissance, C2, EW, cyber, intelligence, security, deterrence, which we've already done, optimizing world stability, etc. The techniques can be applied across domains, ground, air, sea, space, EW, cyber, and joint. And they can also be used in settings where the DoD has little or no combat experience, such as hypersonic, unmanned, autonomous, swarm, satellite, other space, directed energy, offensive mining, long-range precision fires, modern underground, and nuclear, for example, tactical nuclear, where we don't have experience. Now, most DoD settings are imperfect information games. They're games in the sense that there's more than one player. I don't mean that they're somehow light or recreational. Of course, they're very high stakes often. And they're imperfect information in that when it's time for me to make decisions, I don't know the whole state of the world. And the adversary knows things that I don't know, and I know things that the adversary doesn't know. So these are very different than games like chess or Go, which are called perfect information games. And the algorithms, for example, AlphaGo and so on, do not apply at all for these types of games. So I'm going to talk about imperfect information games. The DoD status quo is that in real DoD settings, blue and red have more possible strategies than the number of atoms in the universe. Yet only a small number of strategies for red, typically 1 to 5, and blue, typically 1 to 100, are tested in wargaming and simulations, and even fewer in tabletop exercises. So only a vanishingly small portion of the strategy space is evaluated. This causes enormous risks because a real red in a real war can play something different than any of the things that you anticipated. So in game theoretic terms, red can significantly decrease our expected utility compared to what we thought. Secondly, this makes blue's strategies look better than they really are because they're not actually evaluated against the toughest red. Third, it leaves significant opportunities on the table because blue's strategy space is not fully explored. And also from a training perspective, hiring humans to play red is expensive. Our AI solves all these issues. So unlike simulation approaches and traditional single-sided optimization, our game theoretic AI does not assume a strategy for the opponent. Rather, it computes optimal strategies for blue and red simultaneously. And the strategies are often surprising, as we have seen, for example, in poker, portfolio planning for the DoD, COA generation for the DoD, and so on. Because these are really starting from a clean slate instead of following and coming out from the traditional doctrine. Of course, doctrine constraints can also be imposed, and we do that as well. In addition to computing the strategies, as a side effect, you actually get how red's actions signal information to blue and vice versa. So in game theory, the optimal beliefs are actually a side effect of the strategic reasoning. Over the last 17 years, with over 37 million, we built the world-leading game solving system for many game classes. This is a platform technology. I'll come back to this platform technology notion at the end. Imperfect information extensive form games, which is the most general form of game. And there, in the main benchmark in the field, which is two-player no-limit Texas Hold'em, it's a game with 10 to the power of 161 information sets. So it is huge. That's way bigger than the number of atoms in the universe. We are the multi-time AI versus AI world champion. And then in 2017, our AI Libratus became the first and only superhuman player. And this was published in Science in 2018. Then in 2019, our AI Pluribus beat the best human professionals at multiplayer no-limit Texas Hold'em. And this was published in Science in 2019. This was actually the first first superhuman AI in any game beyond two-player zero-sum games. So if you think about the history of strategic reasoning in AI, there have been great milestones, but they have all been in two-player zero-sum games, starting in the 80s with Othello, checkers, 97 chess, then two-player limit Texas Hold'em, then Go in 2016, then two-player no-limit Texas Hold'em, and now, for the first time, multiplayer games. Normal form games as well. These are matrix form games, if you know, general sum and zero sum. And most importantly, many kinds of structured DoD games with game description languages where it is easy and compact to represent real games. For example, our work with Colonel Diller for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So why is our game theoretic AI better than machine learning for these problems? And nothing against machine learning. I've been working on that for 30 years, but it's not really good for these types of problems where you have an adversary and you need to make plans, and the adversary is trying to foil your plans and so on. First of all, the game theoretic approach requires no data about the adversary's behavior. This is in stark contrast to supervised learning, which requires prohibitive amounts of data in these applications. So I've seen dozens of DoD applications where people have talked about collecting data from real physical military exercises and trying to do machine learning on that. And I've pretty much seen all of those things fail because there's never enough data. So
Dr. Sandholm, 30 more seconds, please. Sorry to interrupt.
I have 7 more minutes. I thought, okay. Somehow I'm at 8 minutes myself, but okay. Doesn't assume red will continue to behave the same way as in the past, and these strategies are not exploitable, unlike strategies generated by reinforcement learning. So let me just skip the impact so far and jump to the last slide. So we actually take a product approach to avoid having to pay 37 million and 17 years for every new scenario. And this is a potential model for the AFWERX Game Digital Engineering Prime. So we have this platform game solving technology product on the bottom, on top of which we build product lines, and then us and others, modeling partners like FFRDCs and large and small consulting firms, build models on top of these product lines to actually solve various scenarios. And this is the way how we don't have to start from scratch every time, but build a momentum over time. Thank you very much.
Dr. Sandholm, I'm sorry if there was some miscommunication there about the length of time you had there. I wish there was more time. We've got 6 people waiting to talk to people in different groups out here starting 2 minutes ago. So I'm very sorry to have to cut you off. Colonel Diller, would you like to introduce the next topics and then I'll talk about the logistics?